Robert Frost was born in California in 1874, but he identified himself with New England because he moved there when he was 11 and stayed there for the majority of his life. He did go to college, but not very often, as he spent most of his time on his farm, where he attempted to live off of the land. That's where he got most of his inspiration from. Even though he did publish a couple of poems, they did not receive as much success as when he moved to England. The publishers actually came crawling back to him, and he famously gave them the same poems that they turned down years ago. Although he had a lot of publishing success now, his life was pretty tragic, as all of his children either ended up dying early or having birth defects, which is why in a lot of his poems a recurring theme of them is youth, especially in the poem Birches, where he mentions a boy swinging on the trees. The other part of his life that shows up frequently throughout his poems is the setting of nature, because he composes a lot of his poems on the farm and turns out to enjoy and adapt to rural life, and it ends up becoming part of his identity as a poet.
Robert Frost incorporates the theme of man and the natural world into his poem Birches, with a very famous tradition in American history, the Transcendentalist tradition. The Transcendentalist tradition became very popular as many Americans started to venture west in search of new lands. These Americans worked long and grueling hours and sacrificed much of their time. This quote, "Where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one's eyes is weeping," shows the sacrifice that had been made in their journey into the frontier.
So, in the theme man and the natural world, the whole imagery comes to the very concept of birches, specifically the birch tree's motion of swing. So, in the poem, the birch is swinging between the ground and the sky. The ground represents the earth, and the sky represents heaven. The upward swing is towards this heaven, towards imagination, towards this concept of transcendence. It's away from the actual truth. Whereas the downward pull is back towards the earth, towards truth. So, if we climb trees, this means that we're reaching for transcendence. Complete transcendence would occur if we actually stayed in the tree. But the narrator in the story rejects this extreme. He reinforces his ties with the earth when he says that earth is the right place for love. So the whole poem is a story of balance. Every high needs its low. And that's why the tree is a perfect vehicle, because it's rooted in the ground. When you climb a tree, it doesn't completely sever ties with the earth because of its roots. Also, the leap down from the tree takes a lot of skill, it takes courage, it takes experience. And it's also a new trajectory every time you jump off. No two leaps are the same. So, and also, in the end, the moral of the poem is that the path up the tree and down the tree is good going up and going back.
The motion of swinging is one of the underlying themes in Birches. The force behind swinging comes from the contrary poles, reality and imagination, earth and heaven. There is this motion between these two distinct poles. This motion of swinging is shown in this quote from the poem. "That would be good, both going and coming back. One could do worse than being a swinger of birches." The swinging and climbing of the trees reflects the speaker's desire to get away from earth and to get to heaven, the sky. Again, the speaker's imagination reflects the desire to get away from.
In the second section of Birches, Frost becomes more focused on spirituality through imagery. He shows this through his need to explore the unknown, escape reality, and by swinging between reality and imagination. Frost shows his need to explore by saying, "I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree, toward heaven till the tree could bear no more, where your face bursts and tickles with cobwebs." His idea of climbing up a tree is a demonstration of his need to go away from earth and reality through climbing. The idea of escaping is prominent, however he finds himself always coming back to reality. He flung outward, kicking his way down through the air to the ground, showing how he is unable to escape and must learn to accept it. Finally, the motif of swinging is linked with the idea of going back and forth between reality and imagination. "But dipped its top and sent me down again. That would be good both going and coming back."
The innocence of youth is also a theme in Birches. In the first lines of the poem, it is read, When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. The speaker dreams that the swinging of the birches is caused by the little boy, but is caused by ice storms. Frost incorporates his innocence to youth in their dealings with the natural world. Youth do not have responsibilities and duties. Youth are free to swing freely. However, adults are not able to do this. Speaker's imagination of being a child again reflects his desire to be innocent. This is shown in this quote: "So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood."
So, for the whole concept of youth, Frost in the poem of Birches uses this concept of aging trees. These birch trees are aged. These birch trees symbolize adolescence, adulthood, and this concept of reality versus imagination. The images of childhood transforming into adulthood is demonstrated through this symbolism. The darker birch trees represent adulthood compared to white or lighter bark for childhood. He explains that swinging on them, which you do while you're a child, doesn't bend them. Situations as you grow up do, such as the ice storm, which is what actually bends the tree. He uses in the poem, "Across the line of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging on them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay." These are lines 2 and 4. Also, trees are also rooted in the ground, so climbing them doesn't actually sever the ties with earth. We see this in lines 55 through 57, that he says, "Climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. For the tree not to bear any more, it would have to die, for the man to depart earth to his imagination. But it doesn't, so he's sent back to reality."
In Robert Frost's poem Birches, when incorporating the theme of man and the natural world into his poem, he uses the motif of transcendence, which can be seen in his use of trees and how they can represent heaven. This relates his poem of Birches to other famous poets, such as Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, who were also leading transcendentalists of their time and in these poets' respective works. His poem Birches also relates to Walt Whitman's work, with his portrayal of boys. In both of their poems, boys have their own wisdom and ways of viewing the world, and this they can pass on to older men and women around them. Finally, Birches also relates to some of his own work, such as Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening and The Road Not Taken, with their common motifs of nature and heaven and earth. In both Birches and Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, we can see how the trees or woods represent some other higher place, as seen in these quotes. "Toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more," and "the woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep."